Yeah.
And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans, to this very special celebrity special event, pre-launch event with the incredible #1 New York Times bestselling author of over 40 crime novels, the legend, the man himself, Jonathan Kellerman, here to give us the inside scoop about the City of the Dead. Jonathan, welcome. Tell us about this book.
It's a pleasure to be here, Sarah. Thanks so much for hosting me. It's awesome. The book is an Alex Delaware novel, which most of my books, 37 of the 50 or 60 books that I've written, are from that series. As far as I know, it's the longest running American crime series. It's been going on since 1985. This is the 37th book in that series. So those who are familiar will know the characters of Alex Delaware and Milo Sturgis. This is a case, I want to say that the key to this case is the motive. I always talk about writing a whodunit, writing a whydunit. The whydunit in this book is especially important, and it's a pretty shocking motive. I'm not going to say more, but basically they're called to Westwood Village, to Westwood rather, right near the university, upscale neighborhood, and apparently there's a dead body, a naked man lying in the street, who apparently they thought was hit by a moving van, but he wasn't. He was already dead. And as they investigate that, they go into the house and find another body there. So it's an intriguing story, and it's I used to be a psychologist, and I'm fascinated by what's happened today in my field, in the sense that legitimately licensed psychologists and social workers and psychiatrists are understandably and justifiably subjected to licensure and ethics and continuing education, as they should be. You're dealing with people. But unlicensed people can do whatever they want with no restrictions. It was kind of weird. Anyone can call themselves a relationship specialist because it's meaningless. And we've, I think, entered a new era of quackery due to the internet. And so I thought, what about that type of a character? Something happens to her, and we're going to find out more. But as I find out with all my characters, as I write about them, I fall in love with them, and I always want to see their humanity and understand them as much as I can. So Cordy Gannett, I came to know, I came to understand, I came to empathize, I came to feel bad for her when she was brutally murdered. But we explore her life and what led up to this, so far, double murder.
Wow. Well, first of all, I cannot wait to get into every single bit of this, because it's something that I think about a lot. So while, as you said, psychologists are subject to licensure, anyone can call them a coach.
Yeah.
I call themselves a coach, a relationship coach, a health coach, a life coach, and that industry has taken off. And yet there's not, a 4-year or 6-year degree with a medical board exam. And who the heck are these people anyway? And and some people who are seeking help, understandably, are very vulnerable. So this is fascinating, especially to have you as a former therapist. Oh my God, so much to talk about. Anissa Joy Armstrong, a bookstagrammer extraordinaire. She does a lot with Friends and fiction, and Jenna Bush Hagar. Anissa, welcome to the conversation. She says she is watching from South Carolina today.
Beautiful.
Anissa, welcome to the conversation. Always a pleasure to have you. So, y'all, if you've been here before, you know how this works. This is your time to ask this incredible author anything you want. So ask Jonathan Kellerman about his writing process, about his characters, about the longest running crime series out there. 40 novels, children's books. He's the master. So much to discuss. So let's get into it. Just type your questions in the comments. We'll get right to them. Darla, welcome to the conversation. She's saying, hi, Sarah and Jonathan. Welcome, Darla. Great to have you. We have so many people watching. Welcome, Mary Ellen, Becky. I'm watching on all of my Steffi, Debbie, Marion. Thanks so much for tuning in. So let us know what questions you have. I know I have so many. So Jonathan, let's dive right in. So as a former psychologist, how does that impact your writing? You must have a fascination with human nature. How does that impact your writing and improve it?
Well, I don't think I would have been the writer that I am without it. I've always been writing. I've been one of those kids who wrote since 8, 9, 10. and I wrote a lot of stuff and I published a lot of stuff, but I was a failed novelist. It took me many, many years to break in. Finally, I went, duh, write what you know. By that time, I had accrued some life experience as a psychologist in a very interesting manner. I worked in a hospital. I was in private practice. I went through the court system as an expert witness. I've been up on the stand. I've been cross-examined. I had a lot of experience with all kinds of things. I finally figured out that I had some specialized knowledge. And one of my inspirations was a man named Joseph Wamba. He wrote crime novels in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He was an LAPD detective with a master's in English. Everyone should check out his work. His most famous book is something called The New Centurions, and they made movies out of it. And he was a great writer, and I think he's a great guy. And I said, well, Joe has this specialized knowledge, but he can write. Maybe I can parlay my specialized knowledge and be the psychologist who can write fiction. And when I finally put that together, I got published. I was by no means supposed to be a bestseller. My first novel, When the Bough Breaks, the first book in the Alex Delaware series, was bought as a very small book. I calculated I got $3 an hour to write it. And I was in practice at that time with a big practice with 3 other psychologists working for me and doing very well, supporting a family. And I said, well, at least I'm not psychotic anymore. I am a writer because I got published with a real publisher. I said, but I don't know if I can afford to do this too often because it takes a lot of time and it's not very lucrative. So I figured every few years, if I could afford it, I would write a novel. Then it became a bestseller. And no one was more surprised than my publisher, believe me. They were shocked. It was bought as a small book. It was just word of mouth. No, nothing specific. The readers really responded to it. And I remember I was seeing patients, and psychologists have this 45-minute hour in which we chart, and I'm charting, and my agent calls from New York. I have a day full of patients. He goes, "You're on the list." I go, "What list is that?" He goes, "The New York Times list." I go, "Oh, is that a big deal?" Because I didn't pay attention to that. He says, "Yeah, it's a big deal, you idiot." So it's a bestseller. And I said, okay, I'll do another one. So I wrote Blood Test. It was a bestseller. I said, okay, I'll do another one. So I wrote Over the Edge. That stayed on the list for 3 months plus. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. So I still didn't want to give up my career as a psychologist. First of all, I liked it. I loved helping kids and families. Second of all, I'm very conservative. And I just wasn't willing to accept that this kind of weird job was going to be a lifelong career. So for 5, 6 bestsellers, I still wrote in my garage from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Finally, after 5, 6 bestsellers, I go, this might work. So let me try writing full time. And I had 3 younger psychologists working for me. So I didn't sell them the practice. I gave them the practice. They went their separate ways and each had big practices. And I've been doing it ever since full time since 1990. It's kind of a strange story, but it's true.
Wow, that is so cool. So did you find it hard to be a psychologist? I mean, because it takes so much energy to hold space. As a big believer in therapy, as someone who has been with therapy for a long time and feels like I'm a better person and a better wife and a better, just in all of my aspects of my life, because I have benefited from that. But it must take a lot of energy to hold space for people to hear their stories and hold their pain and advise them. And then to go home and write from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. in your garage and then go back to work the next day. Were you exhausted?
I was young. I was in my 30s. I'm 72 now. So I don't know if I could do it. I was so driven. I had a nice practice. I'm one of the few people I really only dealt with children. I didn't do any adult therapy except as I was dealing with parents related to the kids. And I just found it a very rewarding experience because child psychotherapy is a very effective process. I had a friend who was child psychiatrist, and he said, "John, let's face it, we do this because we want to be heroes, because people get better." So it was very rewarding. It also tends to be shorter term. And it's not glamorous. So you're not dealing with angst, you're dealing with bedwetting and that kind of thing, almost like a pediatrician. And I loved it. I just loved it. And that's why I didn't want to give it up. It was so rewarding. By the end, I was doing so much legal work too, that I was really out of the office a lot and going to court and, doing that kind of thing. But it was a lot of energy. Basically, I'd come home. I tried to be home when I worked at the hospital, I came home late. When I went into practice, I tried to be home by 5, 6 o'clock. And I come home and see Faye and see, in those days, we have four kids. We have three. I spent time with the kids. I always took off on Friday to be with the kids because I always said, why should I deal with other people's kids and neglect my own? And then we'd have dinner and we'd have hang out and Faye would go to bed. And from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., I go in this unfinished garage and type away. I don't know how I did it. I couldn't do it today, I'll tell you that. But I had a lot of energy and a lot of drive. There are a lot of things I wanted to say. And then when you get the reinforcement of not only getting published, but you become a bestseller, it's bizarre. It's like wanting to be a major league pitcher or a movie star. You can't count on something like that. You can't plan it. So, so that's it.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pop the link to Joseph Wambal into the comments. So for anyone who wants to check out the writer that inspired Jonathan to become a writer, here it is. So let's get to some of the amazing questions pouring in. Thank you all for all of this love that you're showing us and for all of your wonderful questions. Okay, Sherry, lead us off. Sherry would like to know, after so many books in the same series, how do you keep it fresh? Sherry, I love this question. Jonathan, give us the scoop.
It's really interesting because I'm just fascinated by human behavior. It's dictated my entire life as a child and as an adult, either through psychology, dealing with people, or writing about people. And I just find that eternally fascinating. In terms of a series, it's an interesting series because you don't really have a sequel. What I try to do is write each book in a way that a new reader can come into the most recent book and enjoy it without having to have read the other books. But at the same time, you want the dedicated reader to feel a sense of what I call the comfort of the familiar. So it's always a thin line. I just write about things that fascinate me. And Delaware is the reason why I keep, a lot of people get tired of writing series. Raymond Chandler got tired of Philip Marlowe. I know that Lee Child, who's a great writer, got tired of doing Reacher. I find Delaware a vehicle for telling a certain type of story. So I just and I've written books with other characters too. I just think he's a good vehicle for telling a certain type of story. So I still love it. I still enjoy it. The response has been very, very good. The readers are wonderful. And it beats honest labor.
I love that. I love that. So would you say it's your curiosity with and fascination with human behavior that keeps, because how do you keep ponying on Sherry's excellent question, how do you keep coming up with fresh ideas of where Delaware can go and how do you make those characters different from the last 37 books? It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, psychology is great in that sense because everyone is curious about human behavior. When I hit a certain age and my short-term memory started to go, I started writing things down. So I have these files. Every time I either read something or think of something or hear of something, I write it down as a little plot line. I currently have plot lines for about 90 books in my files because stuff I would have forgotten about, but it occurred to me. I thought about it. I stick it in there.
Wow.
Now that's 90 books, and some I've done. So maybe it's 85. But the truth is, that said, while I may go back and look at some of these and say, which will be cool for the next book, often I just come up with something new. I think you nailed it with the word curiosity. I'm a very curious person. It's some people are just not that curious. I'm just one of those guys. I'm immensely curious about almost everything. And I think that really helps.
So I'm still thinking about the 90 because I'm just
crazy,
amazed. So thank you for the hearts up on Facebook, you guys. So are you just walking? Is it, you're walking down the street and you remember a case you did or a time you were called on the witness stand, or you're walking your dog and you see a fight between neighbors and then you whip out your pen and say idea number 91 and then you do it. And then secondarily, how do you file those ideas? Angry man hit by truck. Is that under T for truck? I need to know everything, Jonathan.
Okay. I'll tell you. It comes from so many different places. Sometimes it comes from walking down the street and hearing a smidgen of dialogue between two to people. Sometimes it comes from meeting a person that I find interesting in a social setting. Sometimes it comes from something that I've read. Now, I'm not interested in the page one headline. I am fascinated with the page 40, bottom of the page in an obscure small paper. That kind of thing. It's hard to say. It comes from, and sometimes it just comes into my head from nowhere. I just make it up. That's what people who don't write fiction don't understand. Like, I created this character of Milo Sturgis, and everyone, I can't tell you how many people initially wrote to me. I know who that is. I know you got him. I said, he's made up out of totally whole cloth. I have never met anyone like him, because that's what we do. I am getting paid to do what I got in trouble in school for, which was spacing out and making up stories. And some of us are just able to do that. I really think it's, my wife's able to do it. My son's able to do it. Dean Koontz is able to do it. Stephen King's able to do it. You know, our minds work in kind of a warped manner where, I'll give you a good example. Faye and I had a friend named Michael Doris. He was a literary writer. He unfortunately committed suicide many years ago, but he had visited us, and we were driving him up Pacific Coast Highway, and we saw some guy hitchhiking, and Faye and I turned to each other and go, serial killer. And Michael goes, oh, you crime novelist. But we just see this stuff everywhere. And we're living in a crazy world. I'm not doing a COVID novel because it'll never be mentioned. I want to entertain. I want to take people away from reality. So it's just human behavior that fascinates me. I'm I don't think I'm going to do 90 more books. I mean, I hope I live a long time. I'm 72 and a half. My mom's 102. So genetics is maybe helping, but you just, I have enough ideas. The key is not the idea. The key is turning an idea into a book. That's a big deal. Everyone has ideas, and it's just turning an idea or a series of ideas into a book. And that takes a long time.
How long does it take?
Well, for me, writing a novel is about a year-long process, of which that is generally divided half planning and half writing. I mean, you can write a book in 6 months. Think about it. If I'm doing 3 to 5 pages a day, and then I rewrite, and then the manuscript is 400 pages long, 150, 120 days, I have a book, half a year. But to get to that point, I have to spend an equal amount of time generally thinking about it, structuring it, outlining it, waking up at 3 a.m. and thinking about it, taking a bath and thinking about it, going to the gym and exercising and thinking about it. It kind of pervades your whole mind, and you're thinking about this constantly. It's a kind of obsessive process, and writing down notes and jotting. And only when I feel a sense of confidence do I actually sit down and write the book. And I've learned just to take my time with that. But COVID for me, my editor tells me that a lot of the writers have had a really hard time with it, and they've frozen and blocked and been depressed. I've written 3 novels in 2 years. I have City of the Dead finished, and I have next year's Delaware coming out in a year finished, and I have the Delaware after that finished, and I just started the first 50 pages of the Delaware coming out in 3 years.
Oh my gosh, that's it? We're looking at it?
You're looking at it right from my desk. Manuscript. It's called Open Season. So, I've just been lucky, I think. I finally found something that I seem to be able to know how to do other than be a psychologist. It's certainly not changing a light bulb. So,
thank you for all the hearts up. Everyone's so excited to see that first peek of your oh my gosh, thank you for all the hearts. They're just floating up like heart balloons. To get a sneak peek of, did you say you're 2023?
Let's see. We're in 2020. I have the book coming out 20. Well, what are we in? We're in 22. I have 22's book, 23's book, 24's book. This will be 25's book.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
It's pretty crazy, isn't it?
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Margaret Pinard is laughing out loud at the OU crime novelists looking at the car moment when
That's
you
hilarious.
saw the hitchhiker. I think we're all laughing out loud. I love that. Okay, we have so many questions. I'm going to get to every single one of them. This is so great. I know. I'm excited too, you guys. Okay, Anissa would like to know, what do you know now that you wish you knew as an author just starting out? Great question.
I'm not much for introspection because I think it's the enemy of creativity. But if I had to say anything, I would say just to focus on the work itself and not to get distracted. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me who have not published a book and say, how do I market? How do I advertise? I'm going, write the book. The key is it's a really great job, but it's a really tough job. So what I've learned is to really enjoy the process of writing book. The other thing that's important that I've learned is don't even think about writing a book. It's too scary. That's a terrifying notion, to write a book. I break it down day by day, 3 to 5 pages a day. If I write 3 to 5 good pages, I'm happy. And if I write 3 to 5 bad pages, I come back the next morning and I rewrite them. So it's just a matter of not getting overwhelmed, not thinking too much about things, and just doing it, really sitting down and doing it and not worrying about it.
It's a great question, Jonathan. Great answer. I find myself surprised to hear that a therapist is not a fan of introspection, Jonathan.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, it's good for some people, but it's the enemy of creativity.
Why is it the enemy of creativity?
Because you waste your energy instead of doing. I mean, I don't care whether you're playing, I've always been an artistic person. So I love science and I got a PhD, but the other things that I enjoy besides writing are playing guitar and painting. And painting is actually what I do best because I could just do it from childhood and I don't understand the process. I'm just able to draw and paint. But they're all solitary things that if you think too much about them, you'll freeze up. And so introspection just gets in the way of the process. And it's not just myself who feels that way. I've spoken to a lot of successful writers. The ones who gaze at their navel do not produce. They don't produce books.
This is fascinating. I thought that for sure you were going to be a fan of introspection. Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. Okay, let's get to the next question. Oh my goodness. Oh, there's so many great ones here. Okay, I'm scrolling through to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, let's go next to Darla. Jonathan, were either of your parents into writing? Let's analyze Jonathan.
Yes.
You guys.
Well, I do have a lot of writers in my family. I had an uncle who wrote for a Yiddish paper in New York. My first cousin, Stuart Kellerman, has written books on grammar, and he was an editor at the New York Times. And his brother, Larry Kellerman, was the head of the film department at Brooklyn College and head of the New York Film Festival. My dad was an engineer, and he had 18 patents in the field of electronics. He was quite a brilliant guy, but he was also a published poet. He published some poems. So he had writing talent too. So I think there is that. My mother, who's 102, not in good shape, but still 102, she was a dancer and not one for writing. But my dad definitely was a way better than average writer. When he came back from World War II as a war hero, he wrote a lot of poems that were published in newspapers and that kind of thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Yeah, so there is some of that running through the family. And clearly my son has it. And I married a woman who also has it. So,
Very cool. Oh, Sue, thank you so much. I misspelled Wamba. So thank you. I spelled it wrong. So thank you, Sue, for correcting that. And I have linked the correct link in the comments to Joseph Wamba's work. So thank you for that. Darla said, I know your wife is a writer. One of your sons is a writer. What about your other 3 kids, Jonathan?
I have a son and 3 daughters. My son Jesse was an internationally best-selling writer before he began writing with me. He wrote several novels on his own, and he also won the Princess Grace Award for Best Young Playwright in America. So he's a really smart guy. He went to Harvard. He's a smart guy. And my daughter Rachel is a PhD clinical psychologist. She sees adults. She's in private practice. She's an expert in trauma and sleep disorders and sexual trauma, that kind of thing. My second daughter, Ilana, is a child clinical psychologist. She works at my alma mater, Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, and she's a national expert in the psychology of gastroenterologic disease. She has specialty training in that. One of the few people who really has expertise in the entire country. My youngest daughter, Aliza, is a writer. She published a book with Faye when she was 15 that she actually wrote. She then went to work as an editor at a publishing house when she was assistant editor at the age of 21. And then she went into various businesses as a marketing writer, a director of brands. First of all, she was in the wine and spirits business for a while, which was a great job for, a 22-year-old. And then she did it in the world of finance and computers. And now she has a 1-year-old and has decided to retire for at least temporarily. And I know I just spoke to her by coincidence, and she's working on a novel. So she's a writer too, and very talented. So the kids have kind of stayed close to home. Faye has a degree in dentistry and a BA in theoretical math, but none of the kids wanted to do that. So,
Who are you? Incredibly talented, brilliant, educated, successful, just slaying life people. My God, I should just bronze all of you and put you on a show.
Yeah, it's very sweet. Cool. But that's, it's not an accident. When I met Faye, she was 18, I was 21. And I had planned to go to the University of Chicago and just get a motorcycle and run around and have a good time and not get committed to anybody. Here I am, I'm 21, and I meet this wonderful girl. And I remember on our second date, she's 18, I'm 21, and we both look very young. She looked 14, I looked 18. And I said, not only is this the best looking girl I've ever gone out with, she's so smart. I said, if I marry her, we could have some smart kids. Who thinks that at 21, right? So we got married like a year later at 19 and 22. And neither of us thought we were going to be writers. I was going to grad school in psychology, and she had a degree in math and was going to go to medical school. And then she changed her mind because she wanted to have children. So she went to dental school, and she hated dentistry, but she finished and got her DDS. And then she had Jesse, graduated six months pregnant. And she said, okay, when he's a little bigger, I'll go back to dentistry. Then she had Rachel. She said, oh, okay. And then finally she said, who am I kidding? And then she got published. So go no. So I never thought she would get published because I always saw her as the math science person. I was the writer in the family. I was the literary guy. Unbeknownst to me, she had this talent. And I remember she came up to me, and I had our third child on my shoulder. So it was 1985. And she was a baby, the one who's now a psychologist. And Faye hands me this manuscript and goes, she had been writing while I went to the office to see patients. She goes, read this, you'll hate it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, of course I will. She can't have any talent. She's a math person, Shit, this is going to be difficult. What am I going to do? Talk about nightmare scenario. So I read it. I go, this is pretty good. But she thought I was patronizing her. So we had a little tiff about that. So I called my agent. I had sold my first novel, but it hadn't come out yet. So I was nothing. I had no status. I said, I know what it sounds like, but my wife wrote a book. And he said later his eyes were rolling back in his head. Then he read it. He goes, your wife's a writer. And he sold that book immediately.
Oh, my God.
It was her first novel. So I got published in 85. She got published in 86. It's bizarre, right? I mean, it's just a bizarre story. You can't make this stuff up. I had no idea Faye had any interest or talent in writing fiction. And she's proven herself to be a fabulous novelist. She's also written, I don't know, 40 books or something. It's crazy. It's a crazy story. It really is.
You guys are literally what the quote could say, couple goals.
I guess.
That's so cool.
But we've always kept our careers independent. People ask me, hey, can Faye send me, what do you think about? I said, talk to Faye. I said, the only privacy we have is our writing. We've been married for 50 years almost. We live in the same house. We see each other all day, on and off, but we've always managed to maintain our privacy and yet have a good time together. You hear about guys who retire and drive their wives crazy, right? Because they're in the house now. Well, it's been that way with us for 30 years. We've been working out of the house for 30, 40 years. And so you have to learn how to respect each other's autonomy.
Wow. Yeah. COVID has been nothing for you guys because you're already doing it.
That's a good point.
Margaret would like to know, she said, question, when was the last time you felt nervous about the reception of your work? Great question.
I never really felt nervous about it because I just was by the time a book was coming out, I was already working on the next one. And I was really focused on that. I was really lucky that even though I was a failed writer for 13 years, when I hit, I became a bestseller, and every novel's been a bestseller. So I assume it's going to be a bestseller. It's not honestly the way it used to be. Used to be you could stay on the bestseller list for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, if you get a week or two, you're lucky because there's so many books. There used to be seasons. It used to be the fall books, and now it's constant. So I can't expect that to have the same degree of weeks on the bestseller list or even the same sales, but they're still successful. So I just don't try not to think about it. What used to get me upset was when I would do a book tour and I would be on the bestseller list and they take me around to a store and there were no books in the store. That would just drive me crazy. And it apparently happens to everybody, unless you're Stephen King. But I remember a book where I was like high on the list, like number 2, number 3, and no books in the store. And they would say, well, we ran up what we're going to reorder. And then you're going, well, by the time it takes you to reorder, someone else is going to. So I don't deal with that anymore. I really have put all that beside me because Graham Greene said once a writer turns 60, the only reason to write is for fun or money or hopefully both. And that's what I do. I just focus on it. So I don't really worry about it. I just do the best I can and move on.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Darla saying she loves Sturgis.
Yeah, he's great.
Margaret would also like to know, do you still keep a file of all your cut lines, plot lines, and cut lines?
What's a cut line?
I think the lines maybe you cut in editing.
No, I cut it for a reason. I think my son does. He has files on everything. I begin each day by rewriting the previous day, and I'm rewriting constantly.
Ooh,
So
okay.
There's a reason the stuff was cut. I just like, it's like painting. You don't take pictures of a painting as it's forming, and when you play a bad note, you don't record it. So I just keep polishing, basically.
I love that. Darla saying, Jonathan, you are such a brilliant man. Darla, isn't he? I mean, I feel like I'm in a writer masterclass right now. I mean, am I getting an MFA right now? Maybe. Ooh, Doug, great question. Did you lead Faye into writing, or did she lead you, or did you go into writing independently? So she's watching. So you just kind of answered that. So Doug, we're thinking along the same lines. But was she watching you jealously, do you think?
She wasn't watching me jealously, but I think what she told me is, because she saw me struggling for so many years, and then she saw me get published, I made it a possibility for her, as opposed to just a pipe dream. And I don't think she thought it was going to work out. She certainly didn't lead me into writing, but by the time I met her, as I say, I've been writing compulsively. And when I talked to my son, to Jesse, he says that's what really helped him, in that in another family, if he said he wanted to be a novelist, they might look at that as somewhat bizarre, but that's the family business that he grew up in, and he understands the mechanics and he sees what it takes. So I don't think it was a matter of leading Faye, but I think it was a matter of validating her. And I really try to be encouraging every step of the way. There was no competition. People always ask us, you guys compete? In fact, we used to do some joint book signings, and we ended up in these mall stores and these Walden Books, and people would so rude, and they come and say, well, who's better? Or if I have to buy one, which one do I buy? Trying to split you apart. And so Faye developed a perfect answer. She goes, it doesn't matter because it all goes into the same bank account.
I love Faye.
That's what we say.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Anissa says she is still laughing thinking about you spacing up and making stories.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I love that.
I was a good student, but if stuff was boring, I would just wake up at the end of the class and realize I hadn't taken a thing in, and I was making up stories. So,
I love it. Chrissy Daniel, welcome to the conversation. Chrissy would like to know, how did the collaboration come about for the Clay Edison series?
That's a very good question. Jesse and I began collaborating on a previous set of books, the Golem Books. We did 2 of those books, the Golem of Hollywood, the Golem of Paris. How that happened was I was writing a bunch of other books, a Delaware and a non-Delaware, and we went to Czechoslovakia, and we went to Prague, and I became enamored of the whole Golem tradition, which that's where it happened. So I decided to start to write a book about it. And I did about 100 pages. Then I just got exhausted. I can't do 3 books in 1 year. I put it aside. Jesse happened to be visiting with his family in this room. And he said, "What's that, Dad?" I said, "It's this book I started on the Golem, but he read it. He said, "This is really great. You should finish it." I said, "Well," I said, "Do you want to do it with me?" So we started to collaborate, and we had so much fun. And then we did another one, and then we decided to shift gears because honestly, we thought the books were brilliant. Stephen King thought the books were brilliant. He said they took his breath away, but they just didn't sell at the level that we felt they'd be appreciated. So I had another notion. I had always wanted to do a book about a coroner's investigator. And I said, "What do you think about that?" And he said, "That sounds like a good idea." The CIs here in LA are civilians, and they work with the coroner. They're often nurses, social workers, retired cops. But we realized we're going to set in Northern California, where Jesse lives, totally different ball of wax. The CIs there are sheriffs. So we had to switch gears, and we just came up with the character of Clay. We've done 3 books. The 4th one has been put a little bit on hold because Jesse and his wife just had their 4th and 5th children. They just had identical twin boys, which is a new experience. So they have their hands full, literally. They tried for a 4th and get 5. So it's our 11th and 10th grandkids. So we're thrilled because it's like passive investment. They're doing all the work, but
passive investment. I like that. I like that. Okay, let's get to, thank you, Chrissy, for the great question. And Jonathan, thank you for the great answer. Let's go over to the, Margaret says 2025. So you already know what you'll be writing for the next 3 years. That's some timeline.
It's never happened to me. I have had cases where I've had a couple of books finished, but this is COVID. I mean, it's just, I didn't write quicker. I didn't write more quickly. I thought a very relaxed pace, but with no travel and not seeing the kids as often and not seeing friends and not going out as much, I just came in here and wrote books, I guess. And I felt I did five oil paintings and 3 novels. I've just been energized by the whole thing. You were right when you said this does not look. It's been hard for everybody, but honestly, it's been easier on Faye and myself because we worked at home anyway. It's not a big lifestyle change for us. Of course, we miss traveling and we miss seeing the kids as much and socializing. And we've been pretty assiduous about isolating, but both of us kind of like our private time. So, that's the way it evolved.
Yeah, it's been interesting because actually divorce rates have skyrocketed. I don't know if you've heard but they're calling it the pandemic effect on marriage and partnership because
I can see it.
Yeah, and there's such a strain, especially to have to spend a lot of time together. But you guys, it's so fascinating.
We're used to it. We have a big house with a fairly large property, and we have another house at the beach. So we're very lucky to have places to go. And we used to go to Santa Fe. We stopped doing that. We sold it, but we're lucky that we have a rhythm of which we get together in the morning, then we do our thing and go to work, and then we get together in the evening. So it's not that much different than if we had been going away to work. I have my office, she has hers. They're separate. We keep our professional lives utterly separate. Utterly.
Wow. I want to get back to that, but first I want to hop over to David's question. He wants to know, how were your Gollum books received in the Jewish community? You touched on a very mystic religious issue. So for those who don't know, let's talk about what Gollum is. So I've been to Prague. I went into that synagogue. I did not go up into the attic because I thought I don't want to take the risk. But I don't want to be the idiot who was like, this is just a folklore, and then I died the next day. Like, that's not the way I want to go, Jonathan. Can you tell everybody first what the Golem is, and then answer David's question?
Well, the Golem was this mystical, not true, fictional character. Some obscure rabbi wrote a book as if this was a true story. It wasn't. It was a big fraud. But there was a rabbi named Judah Low who lived in Prague. There's a big statue of him in the town square. And the legend was that he created this Frankenstein monster out of clay, out of mud, to help the Jewish community. And then it got out of hand, and he had to destroy it. Now, it formed the basis for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That's exactly the same story. So I was just taken with it, but it's been commercialized. You know, you go to Prague and it's like Golem burgers and Golem this and Golem that. I have a background. I went to yeshiva. I went to seminary, and I speak Hebrew, and Jesse does too. So we were able to approach it by actually reading original text. And I'm not sure. I never really looked at how the Jewish community, whatever that means, I don't even know what that is. So many different types of people received it differently from anybody else. I don't do marketing surveys. We thought the books were brilliant. I was talking to Stephen King. He said, John, I know your voice. I know Jesse's voice. You've created a new voice. And he gave us a great blurb. And we thought, oh, we're going to have movies. We're going to have a great time. It sold okay, and they were bestsellers, but it just wasn't up at the level of Delaware's. And they were such hard books to write. We just decided life is too short.
So, but there's also this thing where this magical man, this Frankenstein, basically they put together this mud man. That then the person who saw him died. So then they thought, oh, this is too dangerous. So they put him up. They put the mud man in the attic of the synagogue, and then some brave or possibly foolish person was like, oh, this is a bunch of hooey, and then went up there, and then the next day that person died. So then everyone said, that's not, I don't want to be the next person. Fascinating that you could read the original text, because you're able to get right in without all of the translation errors. Yeah,
you read the Kabbalistic stuff and you read all these weird things. I think what happened with the book, and here's the sad truth that writers should really know about. Faye told this to Jesse when he started writing. He said she had said, write what you really want to write, because you're going to be doing it your whole life. Because all people want from me is Delaware. I mean, they'll accept a non-Delaware crime novel. I've written several, but not at this. I mean, they're bestsellers. They're very successful, but they really want Delaware, and they don't want me to deviate. They might want that from Stephen King. They want what Stephen King does from Stephen King, and so to some extent, you become a prisoner of your success. But I don't mind, because I like writing Delaware's. If I didn't, I just have to make a decision and figure out what I wanted to do with my life.
Oh, that is so fascinating, because I think so much of us, so many times writers are just trying to break out of the pack, or trying to get there, and trying to desperately to make a career out of this. And so thinking about, you're painting yourself into a corner, so you better really like that corner. The corner better be heaven to you.
Well, especially when you write in a genre and you do several in a row. There are writers who've been successful doing different things, but you have to start off doing that. You have to write a book here and then write a different type of book. I started out writing a Delaware novel. It was a success, so I said, I'll write another Delaware novel. And after a bunch of them, people want Delaware novels out of me, which is fine. I'm happy with it. And I used to do a lot more non-Delaware. People say, well, how come you didn't do? I said, because it didn't sell as well. And people don't want it. And with limited time, I want to put my efforts. Now, that doesn't mean that if I was really inspired to do something else, I would do it. I'm doing the Clay Edison series with Jess. I'm always happy to branch out. But writing these Delawares takes so much intensity and so much focus. I'm just going to concentrate on doing what I like doing.
Speaking of what you like doing, Debbie's wondering, can you show us a painting of yours?
I don't have anything handy. If you contact me at a later date, I have a book that I did of all my paintings, and I can show you some of them, and I can post some of them. I used to work when I was at UCLA as an undergrad as a cartoonist for the Daily Bruin. So I did a cartoon a day for 4 years, 5 days a week. And at the same time, I did some commercial art. And one of the craziest things that I did, some guy came in with a bunch of rather racy cartoons from Playboy and Esquire. And he said, could you redraw them with animals instead of people? So you get all kinds of crazy gigs. So, my paintings are very realistic. People say, is it relaxing? I go, not the way I do it. Because basically I copy old masters and I try to, duplicate some of the techniques. I paint in a highly realistic manner.
Wait, you just buried the lead, Jonathan. Did you redo the naughty cartoons?
I did, of course. Yeah. I got paid and I was broke. I was broke.
Oh my gosh. I will, challenge accepted. I will go down the rabbit hole to find those cartoons.
Oh my God.
Circle back.
Think terrier in a bikini. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. This is back in 1966, 67. I don't know. But I did cartoons. So I got used to drawing. Oh, I'll tell you a really bizarre story. I used to do cartoons and caricatures that I didn't have a caption for. I actually had a partner who helped me with captions, and I would just hang them on my office wall at UCLA. So I had done a caricature of Bobby Kennedy. And so it was in the David Levine style, pen and ink, big head, and it was very realistic. And so that's a great cartoon of Bobby Kennedy. What are you going to do with it? I said, nothing. It's just a practice drawing. He said, there's a guy named William Buckley. He has this magazine called National Review, and he's doing a whole issue on Bobby Kennedy. Why didn't you send it to him? I think I was 17 years old. And I said, okay, I don't know who this guy was. I just mailed it. There was no email. I just sent it in cold. And I get a call back from Priscilla Buckley, whose sister, who's the managing editor. And she goes, we love your drawing. And we want to use it as the cover for our edition. And here's $200. I said, great, here, national cover drawing. I'm 70. And then before it came to press, he was assassinated. Okay.
Oh my God.
Now I'm feeling creeped out. I'm saying, here's some guy I just did a caricature of, and he is a guy I admired actually, but I do a cartoon. I said, I don't want to be a cartoonist because it is a mean business. And I realized what cartooning is seizing on deformity or oddity and magnifying it. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I kind of stopped doing that kind of thing. But I did do editorial stuff, but I try to be a little less satirical. And
oddly Gollum-like there.
Yeah, kind of strange.
And then he died.
Yeah, and then he died. It was very bizarre. It was a very sad thing. And I said, thank God it didn't come out to press. Imagine if it come out a couple of months later, then you feel really, really bad. So I decided I'm going to stick with psychology and helping people.
Oh my God.
But I did a lot of art and I really enjoy it.
Jonathan, you are a Renaissance man. I mean, you're just so cool. This is awesome.
It's either a Renaissance man or someone avoiding honest labor. I mean, avoid working a real job is what it is.
David would like to know, how do you discover your plot lines?
Well, I think I've answered that to some extent. They just come down. They fly in my head. It's what I see. It's what I hear. I remember talking to Dean Koontz, and Dean said, I've gotten to the point where people recognize me, and that's bad because I like to go eavesdrop and listen to people. So I'm happy that any fame a writer has, it's not like being an actor. I want to be able to almost go anywhere and be under the radar and not be recognizable. So listening, watching, observing.
Ooh, oh, fabulous. Yeah. David would like to know, were there any specific inspirations for Alex and Milo?
Well, Alex, I write what I know. So I said, what if I were slimmer, more athletic, more adventurous? He was about my age when the series started. And I kind of write what I knew, except that I was already married with 3 kids living in the flats. So he was a bachelor living up in the hills. So it was kind of a Walter Mitty thing. But I tried to make him somewhat like myself, but different. And Milo just out of whole cloth. He just came to me. His face, his manner. Milo, I was trying to avoid cliche at all costs. And I don't like amateur detective books where the amateurs do all the detecting. They're cute, but
they're cute.
But I wanted to write about a psychologist, have at least a semblance of reality. But I knew that I'm dealing with homicides. You have to have a homicide cop. Well, I said the grizzled homicide detective, such a cliche. How can I make this different? Well, there were no gay cops in LAPD, but I knew there were because I knew them and I had some gay friends. And I said, why don't I just make them gay? That'll be interesting. And it was not a political statement. I just thought it would be interesting. It would infuse the character with some tension. and we could avoid cliche. So he's this big grizzled guy who happens to be gay, and it doesn't matter. It's what I call gay, but so what? Now, the reception to that's been interesting. Initially, I would get this great mail from gay people going, thank you so much for writing this series. I love mysteries. They're so homophobic. Then it kind of morphed into, how can Kellerman, as a straight man, presume to write about the gay experience? Well, it's because I'm a novelist, and I don't just write about white guys. I write about all kinds of people, and it's just the way it is. And it's just a silly way. And I've had letters from people who are like Milo. They say, I'm gay, and you've really captured that type of person. It's not the cliched person we think about. So that's where Milo came from. But I didn't know I was going to get published, let alone write a series. So you throw everything in there into the first book, and then you got him, and you have to develop him. And he's just been a wonderful character. I mean, their relationship is fascinating, I think, and they mesh well together.
I love that.
Yeah.
Chrissy wants to know, she said, so many novels are being made into movies and series on streaming platforms. Any chance we'll see Alex and Milo on the screen anytime soon?
This is the dreaded movie question that I've had every day of my life for 30 years. I don't understand it. My first novel, When the Bough Breaks, was an NBC movie of the week. It was a number one. It beat 60 Minutes. Something like 18 or 30 million people saw it. It was hugely successful. You would think they would want to do more, but they didn't. I've had so many deals that fell through. We could spend hours talking about Hollywood. And recently we went around. I have a friend who's a producer who loves the books and is obsessed with doing them. And I went around with Jess, and we visited all the streaming series, and just zero interest. Zero interest. We weren't even treated particularly well. One would think, but one would be wrong. So we'll see. I mean, there's just no interest in it. I mean, I visited Amazon, and they said, well, if we wouldn't even be doing Michael Connelly today, we're going in a different direction. I said, okay.
What's the direction?
I'm not sure that they know, but I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's not. I mean, I know the books would make a great streaming series.
Yes.
And as my producer friend, and he's a prominent producer, has pointed out, there's enough material for several seasons.
Yes.
You would think. Maybe.
You really would.
Yeah.
Because you have a loyal legion of fans who are absolutely here for it.
Yeah.
Doug would like to know, do you ever show your paintings?
No.
So they're just for you. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, once you start getting out, then it becomes not fun anymore. I paint for fun, and I'm a serious guitarist. I've been playing guitar for 63 years, and I play classical guitar. And I used to play in a band. I used to teach guitar. I'm a serious musician. But I don't, and people say, do you record? No, I just sit and pull out music, and I practice really hard. So writing is what I do for a job. The rest of it, I think the fact that I don't do it for a job makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, exactly. Because once you start to introduce the idea of getting shows, and then getting reviews, and then trying to book the next one, your mind, exactly. And then you're effectively shifting your mindset from joy and
exactly.
Peace. Absolutely. This is Margaret is saying that quote from Stephen King is so great, creating a new voice. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So Darla is saying it is crazy that Jonathan has so much talent and so many talents, right, Darla? It is. I mean, what an extraordinary Renaissance man.
Well, it's very sweet. Thank you. But what Faye always says when people say something like that, she goes, you don't realize how hard he works at every single one of them.
Ooh, I like that.
It takes hard work.
Yeah.
On everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
True. But thank you very much for the compliment.
Margaret saying William Buckley Jr. That is a crazy story. So many crazy stories. I love so crazy you can't make them up. So he says writing Milo as a gay man was pretty daring when you started the series. Why did you choose to do that? So you see, you weren't trying to make a political statement. You just wanted to keep it. You wanted to get away from the grizzled and keep it fresh.
I'm just trying to avoid cliche, and it extended to Alex's girlfriend Robin. Here's a couple. Here's a couple where the man is dealing with human emotion and the woman is dealing with power tools. So everything in that first novel was an attempt to avoid cliche as much as I could. I didn't see it as very daring. I think it was a period where there was burgeoning acceptance. You know, a few years before that, LAPD was going in and breaking heads in gay bars. It was ridiculous, disgusting. And I dealt with that in a book called The Murder Book, in which Milo deals with memories of his early days as a rookie cop when they were busting heads and he had to keep it secret, keep it in the closet. And it's evolved over time. And now it's pretty much accepted. We've had assistant chiefs who are gay. It's just a different, it's a different environment. But I just thought it would be interesting, really.
I really liked how you said I made it a by the way. So earlier today, I hosted the wonderful debut author Nikki May live from London, and she's half Nigerian, half British. And someone asked her, why did you write this book? And she said, I wanted to see women who look like me, brown women, mixed race women on the page. And I wanted the story to be a story of Black women living successfully, living joyfully, living their best life, not just the stories of pain and hardship and trauma and the outgrowth of being in enslaved peoples or other traumatic histories. And she said, I also wanted to see that their Blackness was a by the way and not the center of the story. They weren't struggling against it. They weren't trying to overcome it. It's just a by the way. And I said, let's see more of that. And let's see more LGBTQIA characters where that's not the center of the story, where it's just a by the way. And I love that you said that, and that was your intention and your incredible outcome with the Alex and Milo series. So thank you for that work.
And her approach is the definition of maturity. You need to get there. You need to get through the other stages in which you do talk about the suffering and everything and get to it. Not that the other stuff ends, but you need to get to a point where you're talking about the common humanity that we all have, you know?
Exactly.
And that's why I talk about the fact that, of course, I'm a straight white guy and I can write about all kinds of people because I'm a good writer. And this whole notion of cultural appropriation is one of the dumbest, most regressive things I've ever heard about in my life. Are you going to say that only people from one group can write about that group? Only one group? For example, Helen Mirren is playing Golda Meir, the Israeli prime minister. And so most people think it's great, but some people, well, why'd they pick a woman who isn't Jewish? Because she's a great actress. It really doesn't make a difference. Anyone who's talented can do anything. And we got to just take that concept and dump it in the trash. It's just a terrible thing. Terrible.
Melissa Watson saying good day from Australia.
We love Australia.
I love Australia. Welcome to the conversation. Always a pleasure to have you, Melissa. Thank you so much. Darla wants to know, Jonathan, do you ever sleep? Because my God, you're writing 3 books. You've written 3 books in this and painted 5 oil paintings. You play the guitar. You paint. I mean, you work very hard at your craft, as you've just shared. So are you a super sleeper? Do you only sleep 3 nights, 3 hours?
I sleep very well, 7 to 8 hours a night.
So you're just productive then.
Yeah, it's not as crazy as it sounds. I'm basically a lazy person. And so I try to avoid unnecessary. I think if I have a talent, it's efficiency and the avoidance of extraneous baloney. So, you know, I don't write 8 hours a day. I write 2-3 hours a day. If I'm as tired as if I worked 8 hours a day, but it's 2-3 hours a day. And then I've got the rest of the day. So it's not that bad. We're up early and we're with our dog and we're doing normal stuff. I mean, people would always ask Jess, what was it like growing up in a family with 2 best-selling parents? He goes, it was a totally normal family. We didn't talk about writing. We didn't talk about books. It was a child-oriented family. They talked about us and we talked about us. So,
Jonathan, I need to see the avoidance of extraneous baloney on a t-shirt. That I'm literally going to get that t-shirt made. And when you come back for your next book, which I hope and pray that you will, I will be wearing my the avoidance of extraneous baloney t-shirt. Okay, I'm just going to take one last question because we're almost out of time. Chrissy would like to know, you have children and grandchildren. Is there a reason that you developed Alex and Robin as I'm going to say child free? I think we now say child free. Chrissy Daniel.
It's an excellent question. And yes, there's a definite reason. I felt if they had kids, he'd be tied down and couldn't get into adventures and trouble.
Interesting.
Simple
But
as that.
you're not tied down. Well, I guess you're.
No, I write about it, but I don't do it. It's an
Mm.
ultimate fantasy. You know, he's out there doing crazy, dangerous stuff, and
Okay.
I don't. So that's exactly the reason. And
Um,
if they ever get married, that that's the end of the series. So, which I don't
That's
intend to do.
Well, I have to say, as an intentionally child-free
Yeah,
woman
yeah,
with my husband and I have chosen to be
yeah.
child-free. I really like seeing characters on the page because there's not many
Yeah,
of us who are
right.
sans little ones.
Nothing
And
wrong with it. It's
yeah,
whatever you want to do in your life
yeah,
is
yeah.
the way it should be.
Yes, exactly. Chrissy, thank you for the great question. Because it was been so cool to get the inside scoop on that from Jonathan. So thank you. And we're going to end there. I want to say, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on Mystery and Thriller Mavens to give us the inside scoop the night before your book comes out.
Yeah.
This very special pre-launch event to give us the scoop on City of the Dead and your incredible career. So fascinating to get an inside peek on your process. And I want to tell you guys, this book ain't even out yet. It's coming out tomorrow. So grab your copy right now. I'm putting it in the comments. So grab it from our favorite female-owned, woman-owned independent bookstore, one of 3 dedicated mystery and thriller bookstores in the country. And grab your copy now. And the good folks at Murder by the Book will send it out to you tomorrow. So get your hands on this incredible mystery legend, Jonathan Kellerman's latest work. There it is. Debbie's giving us hearts up. Debbie, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. And y'all, I'll see you next Monday for #Mystery Monday because Mondays can be murder.